Welcome again, everybody, to Bootstrapped Solo. I am your host, Pratik Shah, and today we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own practice. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest is my friend Jennifer Gore-Cuthbert. She runs a 30-person practice out of Atlanta, Georgia, and that focuses on personal injury, Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group. And she started her practice back in 2013 and has been growing strong ever since. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on. Crazy growth. I want to get right into it. Crazy growth. 2013, we're 2022, not even 10 years, and you're 30 people strong. How did you do that? That's kind of, you grew fast.
I feel like I should be further along, but yeah.
Doesn't every
um,
business owner?
yeah, I think that I've tried to run it like a business for the last 10 years, but there's been so many, pitfalls along the way and just, failing, learning, failing, learning. That's kind of how it's been. But I'm okay with failing as long as we just learn, we get better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to dig in more into that as we get in, but I want to set the stage for a lot of folks. So, when did you graduate law school?
2012.
2012. So you started your practice right away.
The day I got my license. Yep. I
That's
s-
amazing. So, were you looking for a job, or did you always know you wanted to run your own?
so I okay, so the real story is I come from a family of like my dad owned his own business, like I went to business school in my undergraduate, like I always thought I would have my own business. And then um I went to law school and I worked as a paralegal in personal injury like during the day. So for like all those years in law school, I was working in the field. And so when I graduated, I was really, almost helping to run the firm when, you know, by that third year. So I felt like I could figure this out. I could do this. But then I I took the bar and I failed. And it was really brutal because I was like the student body president. I was very involved in the school. It was
Yeah.
humiliating. But what I didn't know was that I was like 6 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And so then, as you know, I had to take the bar again at the next take, and I was 9 months pregnant.
Oh my
So
goodness.
my daughter, if she has like any craziness, it's because my entire pregnancy I was studying for the bar.
Yeah. That's
So
an amazing story. I love that. That's incredible.
yeah, so I passed, and she was like 2 months old when I got the results, and I just started my law firm like right then and there.
That's awesome. And I asked you this before the show, and you told me, you started with a really large budget of
Oh,
$2,000.
for me at the time, I was like, this is a reasonable budget,
Yeah,
I knew nothing.
yeah, yeah. And now that's like, if that's all we got, we're filing for bankruptcy. We're in trouble.
Well, and it's really
Yeah,
funny because I remember there was one time I had a staff member who was telling everybody that, oh, Jen's parents gave her all this money to start her law firm. And I'm thinking, like, if that was the case, I'd be way further than I am
yeah. Right, right.
now.
The business background, look, in law school, they don't teach you how to run a business, right? And as we know, there's a lot of folks that do run practices, and there's some business stuff that's definitely missing. So that's a positive, but everybody has positives and everybody has negatives. Taking the bar when you're 9 months pregnant, I obviously didn't have to deal with that. Like, so
Yeah.
there, when people from the outside always say, oh, well, you had this and you had this, it's like, well, everybody's got something, and everybody
Yeah.
doesn't have at something
I,
else.
I have this sign in my office and it says, life is not, about what cards you're dealt, it's how you play the hand.
Yeah,
And I think there's people that have incredible opportunity that don't know how to play those cards. And then there's people that have no opportunity and they play the hand to its absolute maximum.
yeah,
Um, I think when your parents like give you money or whatever to start a law firm, there's a lot of like pressure that comes with that too. And I didn't have any of that because I just did it all on my own, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone to disappoint or, you know, I just it's just me, myself and I. So I saved up $2,000 as a paralegal and I was able to, you know, start the firm and I literally started it out of my guest bedroom. And I
Yeah.
used to have like a whiteboard and I would say like one day I'm going to have a lot of clients on this board and I just had like 10 clients.
So when you started with zero clients, I assume. Did you have, I mean, I don't,
Zero.
how did it work for you?
Zero.
Tell me.
Um
Zero.
0. So, well, okay, going back, I would say, you know, I was really involved in law school. I was the student body president. I was an ultimate networker. I knew everybody. I was always telling everyone, I'm going to own a law firm. I'm going to own a personal injury law firm. So I was positioning myself early on. So once I launched my law firm, I started telling everyone, "Oh, I started my law firm, send me cases." People knew I was working in the personal injury space, so I just started hustling. I mean, I used to just hustle. My one friend, she was working at a firm where they were taking personal injury cases, but they really weren't, that wasn't their practice area. So she convinced the partner to like send me some of those cases to work on and like we would split the fees. I remember my first client ever was like a referral from one of my law school colleagues.
Yeah.
And, you know, I started a Facebook page like the first, you know, week. I was doing a newsletter from right out the gate.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I mean, my marketing background, I feel like I relied on heavily.
No, you
Uh,
did fantastic. So your newsletter, I mean, obviously, I've always heard of like sending newsletters to your clients and stuff like that, but you didn't have any clients. So who are you sending the newsletter to? Your law school friends?
my professional network. Yes.
Ah, your professional network. That's a good way of putting it. Yes.
And
Which was mainly your law school friends.
my friends,
And
yeah, and you know, people in my network. And you know, I mean, I remember at that time when I first started out, had this like syndrome where I always wanted to like appear like we were bigger than we were. So
Mhm.
I was like, there's one thing I'm not doing. I'm not going to answer my own phone. So I
Mm.
hired immediately, I think Ruby receptionists to like pretend like I had a receptionist, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But like Ruby receptionist, everything has a cost. And when you start with like a $2,000 budget, it's like, how much do I really want to spend on Ruby receptionist? Talk to me about that
Well,
decision.
like I said, I was lucky in the sense that my friend was sending me cases that were basically ready to settle. They were
Yeah.
kind of
Oh,
like,
that's awesome.
you know, and that definitely, you know, created some cash flow. I remember I settled a couple policy limits cases that was super easy. And then I started to like meet some chiropractors and they started sending me cases because I was willing to come to their office at any time of day and sign the client up in their office. So
Yeah.
like they
Yeah.
would call, they'd be like, "We have someone here. Can you come here in 10 minutes?" And I'd be like, "Absolutely."
On
You
my
know,
way. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I
you
was
know,
just down the street. I'll be right
yeah.
there.
"Oh, do you need anything for lunch?" You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, those strategies that really work well in the beginning when you're just in a hustle mode, they're not really scalable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
So let's talk about that. So you said, you started your practice, you were doing some newsletters and some social media on Facebook, and you were just in kind of hustle mode. I mean, what do you mean by tell me about
referrals.
your typical day. So like your first day of starting your practice, you filed all your paperwork, you're like, okay, I've got my corporation, I'm set. Day one, no clients. What do you do? What's your first thing that you did?
Get clients. That's all that matters at
How?
that
What'd you
level.
do? Like, did you call people?
Calling. Hey, you know, I'm doing personal injury. Do you have any cases? I mean, like I said, I ended up meeting a few people that had cases to refer to me. I did get my first referral from this girl I went to law school with. And then once I had, like, let's say 10 cases, my focus was still get more cases, but then it was like get money in the door. So it was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
work the case, get the records, you know, do everything you need to do to to get cash flow.
yeah.
And back then, like if I settled a $50,000 case, policy limits case, you know, there's $17,000 or whatever,
Yeah,
$18,000. I mean, that that was a lot of money to me at the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember when I started my practice, and if I settled a case above 10 grand, I was calling my wife, like, we had a great day today. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had no overhead. So, what I remember happened though was like I started getting like a couple clients, and let's say I had like 20 clients, and they were like, okay. And I mean, I delivered amazing service, everything, just calling them all the time, like, because you have nobody else to call.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, they would be like, okay, well, I want to drop some paperwork off to your office. And I'm like, let's just meet at the Starbucks.
Yeah. 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 Like, so do you ever watch like Better Call Saul and it reminds you of like, me too, all the time?
And then, like, I really realized I had such a complex about, like, feeling inadequate because I had no office. Now, this day and age, I think you could get away with that more.
Yeah.
But back then, it's like, what legitimate lawyer doesn't have an office?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, it's absolutely true. So how long after you started your practice did you actually end up getting an office?
I started it in June and I got an office by August.
Wow.
Because what happened was I met this lady and she had a beautiful office, this huge office, and I just rented a office from her, like a but I had access to like her conference room, the lobby, like the whole thing, and it was like it made me look more legit than I was.
Yeah. Well, how did you meet this lady?
Networking. I think at a bar
Yeah.
event, you know.
Yeah.
I was always like out there like I'm looking for an office, you know. Like
Yeah. So okay. So I want to kind of put this in perspective. When you say you're out networking and you're meeting people at different events, in a typical week at your in the early days when you were in that hustle mode, how often would you be at an event in the evening?
not always in the evening, a lot of lunches, a lot of
Or yes, yeah, yeah.
breakfasts, a lot of bar events, a lot of you know, a lot. I mean, I was on the hustle mode. So,
Let me rephrase. Sorry. In a typical week, how many meetings or networking events would you say you would attend average on average?
I can't really remember on that level, but I just remember it was a lot of shaking hands, kissing babies. I mean,
Yeah.
you're out there promoting your brand, letting people know. But then also, I was trying to be strategic, like what is going to make the biggest impact. And so, like I said, the biggest thing that moved the needle at that time was finding firms that, let's say, did criminal law, but they had accepted personal injury cases in their inventory, and this happens more than you would think, and
Yeah.
they don't know how to work them and they don't know how to close them, and then you going in and saying, I'll come in the office like 5 hours a week and work these cases and bring you some money. So, for
That's a
me,
very interesting strategy.
the reason that I like that strategy is because I was able to cash flow like within the first few months, where a lot of people I've talked to that started personal injury firms, they didn't cash flow for the first year.
Yeah. And also because you don't have to outlay the cost of those cases,
Mm-mm. No.
right? Because that's a big frustration early on when you're starting a personal injury firm is I got to outlay all these costs. Now instead you're going in, these people already have the case. They were already putting the costs in. They don't have to pay you anything because you're just going to get a piece of the pie
Mhm.
and they're going to get cash they weren't getting. It's a total win-win scenario.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's like even other businesses that get PI leads that you could just say, "Hey, if you get PI leads, send them to me, and I'll bring you in some money."
Yeah.
Um so that was my strategy, and like I said back then, I didn't need a lot of cases to make what I thought was a lot of money because I
Right.
had very little overhead. Even the office I rented, I think I rented it for like $500 a month or something.
Right. So I know that kind of epiphany came to you because you had a friend that was working at a criminal defense firm, right? Or at a different firm. And she was telling you like, "Hey, look, we've got these cases, they're not really doing anything." And then but you don't just rely on that. That you took that idea or you saw that scenario that existed and you started seeking out that scenario elsewhere.
Well, what I realized is that there was a couple people sending this firm a lot of their business. And so I
Mm,
started to realize where the cases were coming from. And then I started to go out and try to secure business directly from chiropractors.
Got it.
And
Got
like
it.
people that I started thinking like, where do my potential clients go first? And a lot of them go to a chiropractor.
Yeah. So you started, and how would you get in touch with chiropractors? How would you find them?
I just walk in.
Yeah. Just pull up, walk in. Hi, I'm Jennifer.
Hey, I'm Jen. I'm a lawyer. I was in my own accident. I went through this process. I know how badly these people need help. A lot of these people, even if they have med pay, and you guys get paid, they're not going to get paid. And just sold myself to them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's super important. There's so many people that just go through law school. They don't understand that, just being a lawyer is not a differentiating factor.
Um, no, my one of my mentors always says, everything in life is a sale. Like finding a
Hmm.
spouse is a sale.
Hmm.
um you know Getting people to hire you is a sale. Getting people to work for you is a sale. Like you're selling yourself, so
Yeah.
you have to think about it like that. the, ju-
Let's
the
talk a little
jury
bit more about that.
the
Say
jury
that
it's a
again.
sa- the jury it's a sale.
Yeah. You're convincing the judge, opposing counsel, adjusters, everything. You're selling all the time. And I think there's such a big negative connotation with sales. Automatically, people think used car salesperson. I come from a sales background before law school. I used to sell mortgage leads. I used to sell car. I mean, you name it, I sold type of stuff, right? That's how I got through undergrad and all that stuff. And so I have an appreciation for the art. And I think people assume that good selling is bad customer service when in fact it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, you're helping people to solve their own problem and leading them to understand not to suffer any further.
And if you believe in yourself and your own service, I mean, with you telling me, hey, I would call my clients all the time and I would give them an update of what's going on in their case, and they had an ability to get a hold of me and not a staff member, you're providing a better service than 98% of lawyers out there
I
that are
know, I
providing.
know. But, I always knew that wasn't a scalable model. But in the
Of course
beginning, when
not.
you're a solo, that's all you have to sell is
That's
yourself.
what you have. That's your advantage.
You're able to pivot quickly. You know your clients inside and out. They love you. Um, but, it is I do see a lot of people get trapped in this level.
Yeah, and that's hard to break out of because they think, this is my brand. This is how people know me. This is why they refer me business. And if I start doing it where now they're talking to somebody else, maybe I don't get enough. I don't get as much business. But, that's the fear no matter what decision you make in business, right? As you're building, there's always a fear of the next step. I remember, and I'm sure you had this too, deciding to hire my first person was like this big leap of faith I had to take, and I'm sure for you too.
Oh, definitely. Well, in my scenario, I was assigned a mentee from law school as to be like their mentor when I graduated. And so I asked her, like, do you want to come be my intern? And
Yeah,
so I had like a free intern for like that whole summer. And I think that experience of having somebody working and helping me, I was like, when she was ready to go back to school that summer, I was like, I need somebody. Like I got so used to having help, and that
yeah.
really stretched my mind to like the value of an employee.
So how long out before you hired your first employee?
Well, I got the intern like in July and I started the firm in June. So, I mean, but I wasn't paying her, so it really wasn't like an employee. But
Right.
then I convinced her to stay on and work part-time for the semester and I paid her. So
Got it.
pretty much, but it was like, nominal. I mean, the thing that was stressful, I'm sure this you would say the same, is like I used to think like, oh my gosh, this is a commitment. What if I can't make payroll?
Right.
But what I learned over the years is like you're really only committing to maybe 6 weeks of pay, because like if they are cannot generate you any money in those 6 weeks, you probably would discontinue hiring them.
Hmm.
So,
I think, yeah, that's a great way of putting it because that was a big fear. Was like, what if I hire this somebody and then 3 months in, I got to let them go? Like, that's such a jerk move. I feel bad that they picked me out of all those other employers and I just let them go. But you know, that's part of it. Like it's just
Well, and it's like on them, like if they can't execute at a level where I can convince myself to keep them,
right. That's true too.
then it's really on them that they didn't create enough value to sustain their role.
Yeah, and obviously over the years you've hired so many more people from that first part time person, and you've probably let a few go,
A lot,
and
a lot,
and a few have quit on you,
a
and
lot.
you go through that. Yeah, it's a constant process. So you know, these early days trying to be in hustle mode or being in hustle mode, getting these clients, you got your intern, you get your office, you're starting to build, you're starting to roll. And when you hire, you know, employee number two, were there milestones that you had planned out? Like, okay, if I can make this much money, then I'm going to start building the next one. Or if I get this many cases, then I'm going to hire the next employee. Or, you know, how did you plan your scaling? Because you've mentioned a few times now these things you were doing were not scalable. So you had a mindset of I need to scale. How did you start shifting into that?
I always wanted like a really large firm. That's one thing. I always wanted like I always even today I walk in and there's 30 people here and I go like, "Where's the other 30?" you know? Um so, it was kind of like demoralizing to be like at the only one employee for that. I remember just being like, this ain't my scene. This ain't my show. This is not my life. I don't want to just have one employee. This is brutal. And I think a lot of the things I did was out of pure survival and like pain points. Like, okay, I can't do any more of this. I need someone else to do this. Or this is not a good use of my time. I know that my time over here makes us a lot of money. My time over here doesn't make us any money? And so, like, delegating, 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 and trying to maintain staying in like the highest and best use of my time is how I justified different employees. Um, I think I started with a receptionist and then like a case manager and then a legal assistant and then maybe a settlement clerk and maybe you know, for it was a while before I hired any attorneys. It
How
was a
long
lot,
was it before you hired an attorney?
probably 5 years.
Wow. So it was you. How big was your firm at that point before you hired an attorney?
We probably were at like 8 people.
Wow. So it was you, a team of eight, and then you decided at that point, I really need another attorney to help on these cases.
Well, what really happened was I had my second child and
Mm.
I was going out on a maternity leave. Well, I thought I was going to go on a maternity leave, but I never did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's your business. It's just, what are you going to do?
well, I did later have a maternity leave with my third child, but
Good
that
for you.
that was like
Yeah.
a very orchestrated scenario. With my second child, I started to notice that maybe it was in my mind, but I was thinking people aren't going to send me business because they're going to think I'm like going and having a baby and no one's running this firm? So I was like thinking like I need a lawyer here so I can like not be here for a little bit.
Right.
But I was like, okay, if I had another lawyer, they could assume that the other lawyer will be handling the work when I'm not here.
Yeah.
Um, but the first 3 or 4 attorneys I hired, it was a disaster.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
I was terrible at hiring. I didn't know anything about hiring. Hiring is actually one of my favorite topics now, and I've developed like a love of like the hiring process, and I have like a lot of positive feelings around it now. But back then it was brutal. Um, I hired
What
like
was brutal about it? Tell me what mistakes you made that you learned from.
I feel like I blocked some of it out, but the
It's like
attorney
PTSD.
that tried to steal all your cases,
Oh
um,
man.
the attorney that's just trash talking you to the whole firm. Um, yeah, I just had some attorneys that just were really poor caliber of, I think when you're a solo, the really cool thing when your firm gets bigger and bigger is you attract top talent. Like top talent wants to go work somewhere cool, right?
Yeah.
They want to work somewhere that has a reputation, that has a vision, that has a point of view, that is doing epic things. When you're a solo, it's very hard to convince people to come work for your three-person firm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's I would talk to some of my friends that have smaller practices and solo practices. It's like when you think about the hiring funnel and you've got, tier one talent wants to work at the tier
Tier
one
one
place.
firm.
And it's
That's
just what
that's
it
like
is.
that's my driving force to build a large organization is the I crave the day I can work with some of the talent that's in my mind.
And what happens is as you build your brand, people will start coming up to you and be like, "How do I get a job with you?"
Exactly. That
Yeah.
that is when you've arrived, is when you've built a brand that people are like we have some friends that there is no they could just open the door and people will flood in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It's like I don't want them to talk to my people because
yeah.
I'm afraid. Yeah, don't talk to. You're not allowed to talk to my people.
But that is a strong brand and the people know that by going to work at that organization, they're going to become better,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're going to get so much valuable legal experience working there that it will change the course of their life.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the best. I wouldn't say piece of advice or a phrase or a story or whatever that I heard that really resonated with me on this topic is that you know, if you can provide a vision and you can provide a path so that people that have their own vision for themselves in their career, that vision can fit inside your vision, that's when you're building a team.
that's pure gold. So, it's a really, I don't take away the fact that when you're just by yourself and you have one secretary and one receptionist and you're out there trying to attract top talent, it's likely not going to attract top talent. You're going to get
Yeah.
some mediocrity unless you just happen to know somebody and I mean, I could see a scenario where, you might get lucky, but generally the caliber of candidates is not great. And
And it's reflective of the caliber of business that you have.
exactly. So that was very, very frustrating for me because I considered that I was doing high level work and I am I do everything 110. And
Yeah.
so to have people working for me that are slack, it's really frustrating and it's not a good reflection on your brand. Um Also, this was just happened for me. I started the firm when I was like 28. I mean, back then I think I had like an imposter syndrome. Like, how am I going to get like a 40-year-old attorney to come work for me? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're looking at me and they're like, you're this young girl. Which I have really, that's no longer an issue for me at all. I have people of all ages that work in my organization. And I'm very
Right.
clear now, and I want to say this to the public, the age really has nothing to do with it. Like, truly, there's people that have worked for me that were old, that were not good. There's people that have worked for me that were young, that were incredible. It's not a direct correlation. But I think sometimes your own insecurities are the stories that play out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a projection thing. Like if you feel that you're uncomfortable hiring that person, they can feel that too.
Yeah. And it's like you're having this whole scenario go on in your head that's not even true.
Yeah.
So you have to be really confident and sometimes fake it to make it to get to a point where you're hiring people that are better, smarter, older, wiser, better lawyers than you. You have to be
Yeah.
really secure to do that.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about this real quick is you're building your practice, you're growing, you're closing business, you're generating more and more revenue every year, you're adding new people, you're figuring out the right people, the wrong people. Um but at some point, in personal injury, I think a lot of folks look at success or making it as I'm finally settling a big case or these bigger cases, because that's kind of what we see on the billboards. It's what we see on the websites. That's what attracts clients when they see the big numbers. Um, so how long was it from day you started your firm to when you feel like you first settled that like big case?
It was like 5 years.
That's a long
Um,
time. And that's
yeah,
what helps attract talent too, because attorneys want to work on bigger cases. It's tougher to sell to a talented attorney, hey, come and work on these small $20,000 cases. And I'm
you
also,
don't
by the
think
way,
that sounds
a
attractive?
young attorney. No, I mean, why would you want to do that? You're like, or another firm is saying, hey, come work on these big 7-figure cases. They're like, well,
And
that's much cooler.
there's real good reasons to build a better machine because you get to do
What
cooler
was that big?
things.
Sorry. What was that? When you say big case was 5 years, what was the number? I mean, I don't know how much you can disclose, but
It was $1 million case. And
yeah,
we settled it. It was a policy limits $1 million case and it was pre-suit even.
that's
And
awesome.
at that time it was funny because I didn't think that was really that big a case. Like to me it was big in a sense, but I really didn't think it was that big. Um because you know, you're thinking about a lot of times somebody gets $1 million, it's not never enough.
Yeah,
But
yeah, of course.
like later on I started to the other thing that I think I've done which kind of coincides with this, I have had like such strict blinders on. Like I really don't look at what other people in Georgia personal injury are doing. Like I'm just like this. I don't compare. I wasn't heavily involved in the Georgia legal community, and I think it's because I knew that it was be so tempting to compare, and I had a lot of networking outside of my state. So like in other jurisdictions because I always felt like as a business owner it's so weird. Like are people really being honest with you if they're competing with you? You know?
Yeah,
And so I would do a few things here and there with our like Georgia Trial Lawyers Association and stuff, but like I didn't like after law school when I got into like growing my business, I stayed in like networking mode, but I didn't get really involved with the personal injury people because they're not going to likely send me a case anyway. I would
yeah,
hang out with my friends that did other practice areas and I just tried to like really just put my nose to the grindstone and like do my own thing. And so later when I like realized like people were posting about their $400,000 verdict and I'm like, but we just settled $1 million case.
yeah. You're like, that's kind of cute. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
like I realized like okay, maybe this was a good outcome, but that's just like I feel like I'm always like that.
Yeah, but I think that's what keeps you hungry. That keeps you growing, right? Is that if you think that what I'm doing is amazing, and like not just you personally, like you in the general you, the
Yeah,
royal you is like
I'm
if the individual business owner thinks like what I'm doing is
I'm
amazing,
killing
that's
it.
that yeah, that's when you start dying. Like and that's part of the reason I'm glad you said that, because that's part of the reason we started the podcast, is that there's so many people jumping on social media saying I'm killing it, I'm doing this amazing stuff, I'm doing this, doing that. And as a business owner myself and running my own practice and now running the software company, it's like I never think I'm doing enough. People from the outside are like, "Oh, you did that? That's amazing." I'm like, "Man, we could have done better.
I know.
We could have done this. We should have done it that way, and we should have done it this way. We didn't try that, because
I feel
there's
that.
a puzzle that we're trying to solve that can never be solved, but we're getting closer to solving it."
We're getting closer. Well, I would say that I do feel so blessed to live the life that I live and like I'm way closer to living my dream life now than I was when I started in 2013. Like I get to do more of the stuff I like and less of the stuff I don't like, and I have a way better team that I get to work with every single day, and the problems I have now are much better problems to have. And I don't want to take away from that because I don't want to be like seen as like I'm not grateful for everything that we've done.
Of course,
But
of course.
I also live in the future in my
Yeah.
vision of where we're going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said something really interesting, which was, I mean, a lot of what you said was interesting. I didn't mean just like right now, but like, I mean, I didn't mean it that way. But what I want to touch on is you said I live like the dream life, but the dream life isn't I'm on the beach with an umbrella and my drink. It's that I
Ever.
work on the things I want to work on, and that's
Yes.
really special.
I have no interest really in retirement, to be honest with you.
I
Um,
love that.
and I'll tell you why. My dad retired at 42, and my dad is like what I would consider like a true entrepreneur. Like he started his first company when he was 18, and he worked till he was 42, so that's like 24 years or whatever. But like people that are true entrepreneurs, they don't do well with idle time. And I've seen some of his like glimmer dull, and I think that he's very bored. He's been retired for like 20 years. And like the Rolling Stones is an example I give. They're not out on the road doing shows because they need the money. Like
Right,
this is what they love to do.
right,
And,
right.
one of the challenges for my dad as an entrepreneur is he grew a lot of businesses, but he wasn't really passionate about a lot of them. People like this where they have all these businesses, but like none of them really relate to their purpose. That is the lesson he taught me is like do a business that you're passionate about and that you love, and you will never feel the way that he felt. Like he felt his business burned him out.
Mm.
If you're in the wrong business, you can be seeking retirement. All my dad wanted to do, when can I stop? When can I stop doing this? If your life is set up in a position where that's all you're thinking about is when can I stop? You need to reconsider what are you doing? I am so lucky, and I feel like you're probably feel the same way. Like I get to do this life. I get to do all these things. Like I love what I get to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like you found your next hire.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I still think that all of this is evolving. Like I have 10 like you have a tech company. Like I
Yeah,
see like more things, but like what we have going and where the direction we're going, it's amazing. Like the people that we get to interact with, the incredible minds that we're surrounded by, the mentors that I have, the conversations that we get to have, the people we get to help.
yeah.
Like you should live your life in that mode if you can.
And I think everybody can, right? I mean, look, obviously people have some life scenarios that sometimes it's not possible for everybody, and I understand that. Whether that be family obligations, health issues, or whatnot. But generally speaking, I think what I love about America in general, and kind of why my parents came here, is that if you work hard and you take risks and you're willing to take risks, the country rewards that. This country rewards that, and not only rewards that financially, but rewards that in the sense that you get to have the life you want. You're not obligated to anybody else's belief system of what you should be doing or how you should be running your business. You are able to run it for the most part the way you want it.
It's incredible. Like freedom is one of my core values, and I feel like I live very much on my own terms, and everything that happens in my life is 100% my either fault or manifestation.
Yeah.
And that's like the cool thing about being an entrepreneur and owning a law firm. And the business we are in, it can be very heavy at times, but it can also be extremely rewarding. um but yeah, so you know that's we started to get the big numbers later into the firm, but I do think for a lot of law firms, the big numbers are not what carries the firm. It's the bread and butter cases.
Yeah. The big numbers are the icing.
Well, and sometimes the big numbers really significantly increase your profitability. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of times the smaller cases are not the big money makers, but they're the thing that consistently pays the bills.
And the reason I like bringing up the big number question of how long it takes to get to the big number is that, when I first started in personal injury, I'd never worked at a personal injury firm. I didn't know anybody in the industry or anything like that. I started seeing all these big numbers, when I'd Google and billboards and this and that. And I'm like, man, everybody's getting these big numbers all the time. And then like I'd be 3 years in, 4 years in, and my biggest case was like 100 grand. And I'm like, am I just a loser? Like, what is going on?
Well,
And I started to talk to other business owners. You have a background in marketing, you have a background in business, you have hustle, you have drive. And with somebody like you, with that hustle, that drive, that hunger, that experience, those brains, it still took 5 years to
you
get a
know
big number.
why? Because if you look at historically, statistically, a lot of the big cases either come to people who do massive media like TV, which you're not probably doing if you're a solo, although I have met a few people randomly that have done that. But you either have to have an incredible advertising budget to get those cases right out of the gate, or we all know large cases often come by referral.
Mhm.
And sometimes it takes a certain amount of years for that referral to come back around. Like when I first started out, we only got a couple referrals, and now we have 9 to 10 years of prior clients we've represented that there's an organic churn to our referrals now that they just come in, you know, organically. We
Yeah.
didn't have that machine behind us of people referring to the firm.
And that commitment to investing that time, excuse me, right, is which is hey, as soon as we get a new client, we're putting them in the system, we're adding them to the newsletter. And just because they don't refer us, or none of our clients referred us any cases for 3 years, we're not stopping the newsletter. We're going to keep it going, and we know this is going to eventually pay off.
Yeah, I think like marketing is all about consistency.
That's beautifully said. And it's very frustrating as a business owner when you have limited time and limited assets, and you're consistently doing something and you're not seeing an ROI, and you're like, this isn't working.
Yeah, that's the temptation, but um, I think if something is not working or it feels like it's taking a lot of your time, for me, I got a marketing assistant at some point, and then I was like, whatever, we're just gonna let it keep rolling. Um, and the marketing was a pain point at one point because, posting on social media, all that stuff, I don't do that now. I mean, we have people that do that, but it's a daily thing, to stay top of mind. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so much you could say about that.
Yeah, I heard a story once of, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they say there's this tree in Japan that like you have to water every day, and you won't see it sprout at all, a flower or nothing, for 6 years, because it's
Yeah, I
just
think I've
building
heard
its
of
roots.
this.
And
Yes.
then the tree will grow 9 feet in 18 months. And so did the tree grow for 6 years, or did it grow for 18 months? And a lot of times those roots are building, and we just don't see them. We don't know. And we don't really understand that you just got to kind of keep on it.
Well, what was frustrating for me at that period was although we were building those roots, you're thinking, I need cash now.
Yeah. 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 I got payroll. Yeah.
Like
Payroll's
this
not
is
waiting
great.
6 years.
So what's going to
Yeah.
get us the case tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's true. It's true. And so that, this kind of naturally leads me to the next topic that I want to talk about is these frustrations that come up, right? At different stages of a firm, there's different problems and there's different frustrations. Can you think of something? Let's start with the worst and the ugliest, right? We said at the top we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want to talk about the ugliest thing is in the almost 10 years now you've been running your practice, like the toughest, ugliest moment.
um, I think some of the worst moments were just certain hires we had that were just horrible, and having to deal with those scenarios and letting people stay too long that you need to get rid of, but you have no one else to do the job. Um, you know, that's some of the worst. I think also not enough people talk about cash crunches.
Let's talk about
I
it.
mean, I study personal injury, I study finance, I run this whole firm off of data. And you look at the mathematics of it, it's a complex business to run. Okay. Well, you're taking cases on, and then you're agreeing to pay people to work on these cases for months, if not years. And then at some later date, you're going to be paid. Like most people wouldn't sign up for that business
Yeah.
model.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, your dad, who's a serial entrepreneur and has run multiple businesses, would look at that business model and say, no, that doesn't make sense. There's way better business models for me to run.
It's a cash lag business.
Yeah.
So you're putting out cash now for cash. You're loaning a lot of money out.
Yeah.
You're lending money out to fund these cases, not only in payroll, but in marketing dollars, in case costs. And then when you're talking about litigation, we're talking years, and gambling on some level that whether all this cost and expense is going to be worth it. And you've got to run the firm efficiently enough that a case that, let's say it's a policy limits case, $100,000 is all you're ever going to make off this case. If you do that case in 12 months and you can get the 100, it's way more profitable than if you do that same case and get 124 months.
Right.
So there's massive pressure to run the machine extremely efficiently.
And
And,
here's the other problem is a lot of times you're not the bottleneck on why the case won't settle. You've got another side that doesn't want to pay you.
that you have no, I mean, and it's again, like we've done lots of cash forecasting. We've done inventory forecasting. We've done looking at different data points like which insurance companies pay faster, which ones pay slower, but the best of the best, I work with some of the best in the industry on cash flow predictions on personal injury law firms, and they tell me, Jen, we can give you projections on an annual basis. We cannot give it to you on a weekly or monthly
Right.
basis. So when is payroll due? Payroll's due on a weekly and monthly
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. And
It's like I have $1 million coming. Can you just not get paid this week?
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
No.
yeah. And we've had some people on the podcast before talk to us about going through those cash crunches. I specifically remember a gentleman talking about had payroll coming up and he knew these cases were going to settle. Couldn't he woke up in the morning and knew he had to hit payroll that day and didn't have the money and he ended up like
I've
borrowing
been
it
there.
from
I've been there.
talk to me about that. How'd that happen? What'd you do?
One time I literally see, so we do a lot of things to, like, once it settles, to get the money in the door really quickly. So we have them overnight FedEx us the checks with our FedEx account.
Yeah.
Because these checks would get lost in the
Oh
mail. I
yeah.
remember back in the
Oh
day,
yeah.
I'd be like waiting on this $100,000 check, and like it's lost. Like,
And they're like, it's gonna be
um,
another 4 weeks because we gotta stop payment. You're like, 4 weeks? Ah, that's three
yeah,
rounds of payroll.
so I know. I remember one time driving to the headquarters in Duluth here in Georgia to pick up the check in hand
Yeah.
and deposit it in the bank like cash,
Oh, oh yeah.
like like if you deposit it in the branch, they're like, we could possibly release it tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to do that, and I remember being in those situations where you know it doesn't look good. It's not good optics when you're like, I'll come pick it up, but like a lot of times it'd be like, oh, what a coincidence! I'm in the neighborhood. I'll just swing by. Like it's gonna be like 2 hours though, because I'm not gonna tell you why.
You really, like, you look around now and you're like, they knew we were desperate.
100%. Yeah, you thought you were so smart pulling this stuff all, and they're like, man, this loser's driving over to our office to pick up the check.
Like, don't like, and then at that point you don't even have any staff, so it's like you driving there.
Yeah.
It's like you might have like a one assistant or something. So yeah, I though that was not fun
I
times.
remember one time I was in a real cash crunch situation and I went and picked up the check and I had the disbursement sheet ready for the clients and the doctors to sign. And then I spent the whole day driving around to get everyone's signatures so I could cut checks ASAP because I didn't want to wait for DocuSign. I didn't want to like wait for these signatures. Like, we're gonna do this right now because this needs to
Today.
happen today.
Actually, I have a concierge level service. I'm coming to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Every single call was like,
I know.
"I'm in the neighborhood. Are you available? Can I just swing by real quick? I'm finishing
It's
up the
so
lunch down the
humiliating.
street." Yeah, they don't know.
I know. But now I look back and I'm like, I'm humiliated.
I know.
I'm humiliated that I did that.
No, don't be. I mean, look, it's survival. It's.
Yeah, it truly is survival. And I will tell you, the one thing in my mind was like, there ain't no way I'm going down. Like, I will die at this desk before. Like, there is no, they said, oh, businesses, not all businesses survive. There was like, no, this is going to work.
Yeah.
I don't care what I have to, I will crawl over broken glass. We are not closing this shop. So,
But and
you
that
know,
and that drive, you have to strip yourself of any sense of ego or pride because that's why businesses fail a lot of times. Is I'm an attorney, like I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that, and that's a problem. Like a lot of times, ego gets in the way of people making money.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, and you have to check your ego. I mean, I went into this phase where I did like incredible amounts of personal development. I just feel like I was not a good leader. I was not a good manager. It's really hard when you're like I mean, I consider myself like I'm like a get shit done kind of person.
Mm.
I'm relentless, right? It's hard to make the transition from being like the star to the manager that builds other people up because I would just get super frustrated like
Yeah,
why can't you do this,
yeah.
why can't you do
I'll
this,
just do it
you
myself.
know I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
And that is a very limiting mindset, and so I had to get out of that and I had to make the decision, do I want to remain the only person that can do these things, or do I want to grow as a leader, grow as you know, somebody that's managing people, and that's a very difficult transition to make.
Yeah, how did you do that?
And
How
you
did
have to be
you
patient.
what did you do to, develop that part? Because that is very difficult because I know I went through that where it was like, dude, we can't find good people. Like I'm just going to do it myself. I'll just work the extra weekend or the extra whatever. I'll just stay later and just get it done. But you're right. Like at some point that's a bottleneck.
I just think like my core value on freedom was what always drove me. Like, okay, Jen, you're not gonna have any freedom if this you can't get let other people do it. And then I had a couple experiences where some really talented people, I just got very lucky, came and worked for me. And once you experience having someone who's smarter than you come work for you, that will check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
And then you're like, ooh, I could get down with having more people like you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You have any friends? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then like once you experience like, oh, this is so cool. This person brings so much value to the table. Like if you could have an experience of having one incredible employee, it could change your entire mindset.
That's awesome. So,
But,
how
you
did
know,
you? What was the process you took? I understand the mindset of personal development and why you were motivated to become better. But was this like, hey, I read books on it, I watched videos, I did
well,
seminars, or talk to
I
me about
hired
that?
a business coach.
There you
I
go.
hired a business coach at year 2. And then I went on like a workshop tour where I went to every workshop that they had like around the clock, and I just was like, I have to get better. And then I met people at these workshops and these business coaching things that were much bigger than me, and I got like obsessive over like what are they doing that I'm not doing. And then like these people were in other DMAs and other markets, so they were very honest with me. They would tell me their numbers, they would tell me what they're doing, and then I would see them traveling with like their staff, and I would see like they have an operations director and they have like a finance person and they have a bookkeeper and they have all these people, and I would just like go sit and breathe their air and be like, what is it like, what is it like to have those people, you know? And I would start to visualize like one day I'll have these people, and then I felt like I was just like modeling, trying to recreate what they had.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think there's a lot of hesitation for people in wanting to hire a business coach or something. Again, going back to that ego of like, I don't need them. Like, I know what I'm doing, this and that. And did you find that hiring a business coach was a positive decision for you?
The first year I hired a business coach, my revenue tripled.
Wow.
So I would say yeah.
Yeah.
And like my business coach was like an ass kicker. I mean, they were just like, you want to be right or you want to make money?
Yeah. Yeah.
They would just tear you down. So like there was, and then like, there was a lot of like resetting your mindset and teaching you about business. And there was like like I always say, like people see where I am now. There's been 7 years of study.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've been literally in like the hard knocks school MBA for 7 years.
Yeah.
Like there's been I probably have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal development and coaching.
Wow.
I've been to hundreds of seminars. Like I want to get better. I don't want to have to learn everything the hard way.
And that's important. Like that is so hard to to accept, right? Which is
Why?
it is
Why?
hard. It
Why
is
though?
hard for me. It was hard for me. It's hard for a lot of people. I mean, I've learned like I'm a reader and I kind of learned that way, right? So I read a lot of business books. I read a lot of books by people that have built a lot bigger businesses than I've built and so it's similar in that process. My learning process is just different, right? And I found so much of that when I read these books of like, oh my God, I can see how I would have made this mistake. And now that I've read this, and I've read the same thing in 6 different books by 6 different business owners, clearly there's some consistency here that I need to be doing.
The one I love to read too, and I love podcasts.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would say that's different with a coach, and I've had a lot of coaches, I still have a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by coaches. Um, you know, you can read a book and think you understand it. And then when it really you only understand it if you can execute, right?
Right.
To know and not to do is not to know.
Not to know. Yeah.
So, like, I would go to my call with my coach and I'd be like, yeah, 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 I get hiring. And they'd be like, okay. And then they would start poking holes in what I'm doing. And like, I think there's this idea that everyone has a blind spot. Like, I can't see back here.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people like convince themselves that they know things that when it comes down to it, the numbers and the data and the execution shows you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
And
love that.
so I like a little bit of like getting I don't know, I'm like a crazy person. I like them telling me like you don't know.
And it's also accountability because
Yeah,
you can't be accountable to a book because the book's not going to check
you
on you.
can't.
Yeah. But you have somebody that
No.
says, hey, did you do that thing we talked about last week? Did you, hey, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this. How come you don't know that number? You should be knowing that number. That's your business.
Yeah, and that like overachiever in me like doesn't like to disappoint my coach.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to show up with nothing,
Right.
And like I think as a business owner there's a huge vulnerability in nobody holding you accountable.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Right.
Your staff is not going to hold you accountable because they don't want to get fired. So I think, and there's a lot of people that own businesses that surround themselves with yes men, and that's very dangerous,
Yeah. It limits your
you
growth.
know.
It limits what you can do. You know, we've all heard that old kind of adage and saying, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I believe
Yeah.
that when I've seen that difference when I have meetings and dinners and whatever with people that are so much more that have gotten to where I want to get to, not just financially, but just in building a business and in life and whatever. Those conversations are so different than the other conversations I have when I'm just hanging out with my buddies or whatnot. And it's like I want to have more of those conversations because and that's what this is, right? Is there's so many people and so many different perspectives and so many different businesses that we hear from and you're like, wow, there's some consistent themes. Like something, you talking about being in hustle mode, just grinding, having a vision, executing. That's pretty consistent over a lot of the business owners. And then on the micro level of how that's executed is very different for everybody.
Very different.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But the macro big things, you got to have that mindset, and then you figure out the micro on how you're going to get there, or help with the help of a
Yeah.
coach. And everybody is like Michael Jordan had a coach, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just think like it's so easy to kind of, I don't know. I will say there's also a level where you can get overcoached.
True.
That has happened to me before where I had coaches that were giving me opposite advice, and that's very dangerous too. And the other thing is you can outgrow your coaches. And I've outgrown tons of coaches that I worked with where they were like life shattering and amazing at one level. And then, at another level, like they really weren't challenging me anymore. And it's hard to leave behind coaches and to outgrow people. And that was a really hard situation for me. Sometimes when you're in these coaching communities, all your friends are in there. It's your community, and you have to know when it's time to go to the next level.
Yeah, that's very insightful. So, a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up. What is your favorite part of running your own business?
I love the marketing. I really do. I like the marketing. I love spreading the message of our business. Um, I am still pretty involved in the marketing, and I think like a lot of owners, they can, even though we have people running the marketing and that lead that, you see a lot of owners will pick like one area that they stay involved with. And that for me is definitely marketing. Um, I like the building the culture and building the vision of the firm. And I think the owners should definitely be involved in those two things. Um, I don't love the building of the systems. That's not that fun for me. It has to be done, but it's not managed by me at this point, and it's always been hard for me. I'm not like that's not natural to me to build systems. I like want to like get something going and then let someone else run it.
Yeah.
Um,
But the systems are
I
necessary, right? It's like
They're absolutely
there's just
necessary,
no way to scale without that.
but like systems, they're so tedious to me.
Yeah.
Like they're so meticulous and tedious. And I have people on my team that are incredible at systems and they are obsessed with systems and they're great at building systems. I just don't think that's my strength. But I love the getting to get out there and like meet people and network on behalf of the company and learn. I also really like mentoring some of the staff and like building our team. And we're starting to do some cool things internally, like coaching our team and building like cool parts of like we're going to start a book club and
Oh, very cool.
just fun. I think like the work we do, it's amazing, and we are helping clients, and getting results for our clients is so rewarding, but also like building a company that you love to work at is also so rewarding.
Yeah. 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 All right. So, another next question. Going back in time, you've had a lot of coaches. You've grown a lot as a lawyer, as a business owner, as a person. You're a mom. You're all these things. If you could go back 10 years and talk to young Jennifer, who just failed the bar, what would you tell her?
It's going to be okay. I think like you always are like, when you don't have that peace of mind that it's all going to work out. I feel like even the way I am now, 10 years down the road, the advice would probably be the same. It's going to be good. You don't need to stress.
Yeah.
You got it, you know? But it's also part of me that I think keeps the company growing is like I always feel like we got it. We got to keep going. But I think I've learned to give myself more grace and to be more compassionate to myself. I'm like very, very hard on myself. I feel like you're probably the
Yeah.
same way,
Yeah.
you know,
Being more
and
forgiving. Yeah.
yeah, like you're gonna get this. It's not my COO Tracy. She always says, "What's meant for you is meant for you," and she told me years ago, she's like, I knew the company you were going to build the day I met you.
Wow.
And like, I do believe there's part of who we are that we're just basically living out like what we were meant to do here, you know? But it's like you're always like afraid you're not for me, I'm always afraid I'm not going to live up to my full potential.
Yeah. Same.
I want to see that, you know? But I feel like we're on the path and I should give myself a little less hard time on that.
And it's a balance because if you start, pulling your foot off the gas or stop holding yourself accountable, it's very easy to slip into that comfortable mode.
Although I will say, as of lately, this has been a really big transition for me. I used to think like going back to our conversation on the hustle and the grind, like the hustle and the grind used to be painful, right? It's like it's a lot of work, it's intense, it's a grind, you know? The more I've built my business as of lately, it's like the more I just step into just being myself and doing the things that are the highest, like best of my talents, it's the company seems to be growing faster, more effortlessly, you know? And so it's like that transition from the grind to just like it working like so much easier,
I
you
mean, it
know?
sounds like it's fair to say it's like a transition between surviving and thriving.
Yes, that's exactly what like the vibe of what I'm trying to say. It's like you can be in that survival mode for so many years, but it's so much better when you get to the mode where it's like all working together and you're just more operating in your power.
I love that. I mean, I think that's a great place for us to end. I really like that a lot. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Can you share where people can get a hold of you? Obviously, your website and Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group.com.
Yeah, atlinjurylawgroup.com. You can email me, Jennifer at atlinjurylawgroup.com, and find me on LinkedIn, social media. My handle on Instagram and is Jen Gore Lawyer.
Awesome. Awesome. I think you're going to have several people reach out with some questions and thoughts and comments because this was really enlightening. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that appreciated it. So thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for listening or watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. And just remember, just because people like Jennifer make it look easy and effortless, it doesn't mean that it is. And one ask for all of you guys, if you enjoyed the pod, please share where you share stuff and let people know about it. We think we're spreading, good news and good information for people. We heard a lot of good stuff here, and I think it can really help some folks. We don't sell anything on here, so we really help and appreciate your assist in growing the pod. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. Thank you, Jennifer.